My name is Dennis Mureu, and I'm an Enfield resident. I just want to give you a story of my COVID experience that I went through and I'm still going through. It all started back in December of 2020. This is before the vaccines came out, and that's when the spikes were going up and everyone was getting very ill. And I started feeling very unwell and fatigued towards the end of December, and I just didn't know what it was. Decided to, blame it on, having a long, exhausting year. So I decided, end of December, I'm going to relax. I'm going to spend time with my family. On the 23rd of December, I went into London where I work, and just felt really awful. Didn't feel very well. Ended up leaving early and coming back home. The next morning, I just still wasn't feeling myself, but again, it was one of those things where just tired, and that's when my wife decided, we should go get tested. So this was the day before Christmas, and he says, okay, fine. So we ended up in Tottenham. We found a place in Tottenham which was very busy. You couldn't get a lot of places were booked up. But if we got a place in Tottenham that would take us in, so we went in there, and me and my family all got tested, and and we thought, okay, we've done that, so we wait to see what the results were. The next morning was Christmas morning, and of course, everyone was very excited, but I was just on a downward spiral. But I kept my head up, I kept my strength, tried to keep as much strength as I could. It was just, I was losing my fight, but it was Christmas, and I didn't want to disappoint anyone. So we ended up, enjoying our Christmas. Well, they enjoyed their Christmas, and I was trying to be part of it, which I wasn't really. That night, which was, Christmas night, I started really spinning and just going downward spiral. And that's when I started having problems breathing. My wife called 111, but I still didn't think I had it. I just thought, I just think I have some infection that's, I don't feel that I have it. I was still in probably denial at that point. And sometime that morning, she looked at me and she says, I'm going to take you to hospital, and I think it's time to go. But luckily, and around the same time, she heard the ambulance pull up. So the ambulance guys pulled in, and I'll never forget, there was a young man and a young lady who are as brave as I can imagine them to be, going through all this, suited up, not knowing what they're going to find. And they walked in and they looked at me, and they said, we just need to do they could tell I was really, really bad, but the decision was, do we take him to hospital? And as soon as they did all the oxygen, they said, you need to be in hospital now. So they rushed me with, sirens and the lights flashing to North Middlesex Hospital. And we got there, but there was a queue, a 25-minute queue of just ambulances trying to get patients into the hospital. So eventually, after about 25 minutes, they were able to get me into the triage area, where it was full of other patients. And the doctors came, and they were doing tests, and my oxygen level was just depleting, and I needed to get more and more oxygen. And eventually, the doctor said he needs to go up to ICU. We're not being able to keep up with the level of oxygen that he requires. I was in the triage for roughly 4 hours before a bed was available in the ICU. And I would say that when they mentioned that I needed to go to the ICU was the first time that I realized how sick I was. It's when it really sank in that, this is very serious. So I was taken up to ICU, and as soon as I got up there, you realize that you're not in control of things anymore. Being down in triage, I had time to think, I had time to kind of look around and assess the situation. But when I got up to ICU, no one was really talking to me, because they were busy just trying to put as much in me and, trying to basically work to keep me alive, which I didn't know at the time. And I remember two people coming in and saying, you're here, you're very, you have COVID, and would you mind being part of the research? And I knew at the time that there was no one quick solution to this disease. And I said, yeah. He says, why not? Because if I can help anyone else out to come out from this, even if I don't make it, at least I'll have tried to help as many people as I could. I was in the ICU and with this mask for 4 or 5 days. I couldn't tell you what day it was or what time it was, because you just lose track of all this time, and you don't know whether it's day or night, because the ICU was in a dark place, and there was no light. There was you were just in your room, and all I could move was my eyes, because everything else in my body had just, the energy had just zapped away. And I remember being in there, and I can only imagine it being one night, a nurse walked in. Not one of the nurses that I had seen, but an older nurse walked in. She asked me if I was a Christian, and I said I was. And she held my hand and she prayed for me. And that was one of the most touching moments that I would say of the whole experience, is because it brought the humanness back into that situation that I was. Luckily, my body was now being able to fight back. They were able to get me off the dark cliff, and my oxygen they were able to get my oxygen levels back to just sustain. And eventually I was able to just kind of move out of the ICU back into a ward. That period of time that I was in the ICU, which was about a week, it zapped everything out of me. I left the ICU not the same way I went in. I left the ICU not being able to stand, not being able to walk, not being able to even just get out of the bed. And that, if there's a message that I would say is it robbed me of my core strength. And it's taken me a very long time to regain my strength, to get back to what I'm not back to where I was before, but I have the strength now to be able to get up, because I could sit I wouldn't even be able to get out of bed. And I remember one of the nurses in the ward telling me, if you want to go home, you get out of that bed. And the day you get out of that bed and you sit on the chair is the day you start beginning to get home. So I worked from getting out of that bed to get on that chair to eventually getting home. I tell everyone out there that, we didn't have a choice of whether we wanted to take the vaccine or not. It wasn't there at the time. And if this can be avoided by anyone taking the vaccine to prevent yourself to getting this sick, it is worth it. There's no doubt. I've gotten the jab, I've gotten the, even double jabbed and the booster as well, because it is really important to prevent. It's an insurance to make sure you might get it, but you're not going to get as sick as I did and be on that cliff edge of whether you're going to live or whether you're going to die. And it's something real. I mean, a lot of people say, so I wouldn't get that sick, but COVID is real. And and I hope my experience and what I went through, just gives you a glimpse of what some of us who didn't have a choice of whether or not we wanted to take it or not went through. One of the lucky things that I had is I didn't have any underlying issues or underlying diseases, because of the fact that my core strength was robbed by COVID. A lot of people ended up dying not because of COVID, but because of the fact that they had underlying issues. And because COVID came and wiped away all their strength, their bodies are not able to fight the disease anymore, and they succumb to the disease. One of the other things I realized and is that a lot of us are borderline, have some issues. You're not in that level where you've been diagnosed with something, but you're borderline, and because your body's still functioning with it. You have you're borderline diabetic, or you're borderline have high blood pressure, but you're not taking any medicines. You're being able to cope with it. But when something like COVID comes along, that and robs you of your core strength, your body now cannot fight and cannot keep that same borderline. And you find that a lot of people succumb to whatever borderline they are. So keeping your health and making sure that you're healthy and you're exercising and you're eating well is another key, really key thing about fighting something like COVID, because if you're underlying anything, your body would not have the energy and the fight to fight any of these diseases. Before I had COVID, I wouldn't consider myself very athletic and very healthy, but I was lucky that I just did not have any underlying issues, because that's what would have been the tipping point for me. And the doctors told me that would have been the tipping point for me. But keeping healthy is very important for all of us.